Hello, Detroit. My name is Joseph Kemp, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the Joe Louis Greenway Neighborhood Planning Study. Welcome to our virtual presentation. On today's agenda, we'll be discussing the Joe Louis Planning Study overview. We'll also be talking about what we've learned so far in each one of our planning areas, then also our process and how you can get involved.
Hi, my name is Michelle Flournoy, and I'm a planner with the City of Detroit Planning and Development Department. Why we're here today is to talk about the neighborhood planning study around the Joe Louis Greenway. So what is the Joe Louis Greenway? A 27.5-mile path around the City of Detroit, connecting to the city's riverfront, to the Dequindre Cut, running through and touching 30 Detroit neighborhoods across 5 districts, and even connecting to Highland Park, Hamtramck, and the city of Dearborn. This is a big deal. While hundreds of millions of dollars and 27 plus miles of greenway in our neighborhoods is a really big deal, it's more than that. Named for Joe Louis, a symbol of Detroit and social justice, this greenway has the opportunity to honor him and ensure his legacy lives on. During the Joe Louis Greenway framework planning process, we heard from residents over and over again that this project was an opportunity for stabilization and transformation within their neighborhoods, talking about ideas like housing and jobs and small business growth within their neighborhoods. And that's why we are back talking to you and starting this process for Joe Louis Greenway neighborhood framework process. The Joe Louis Greenway includes parts of the Detroit riverfront as well as the existing Dequindre Cut. It'll connect north from the Dequindre Cut on an extension of that rail line over to Hamtramck Drive and through Hamtramck on Joseph Campo. The other major railway that this project includes stretches from the west side of Detroit at West Warren Avenue, north across I-96 and east all the way through Highland Park and into District 3, where it meets up with Joseph Campo bike lanes. Important parts of the design to consider when you're thinking about the themes that we'll be talking about in the neighborhood framework, the neighborhood planning process, are the way that this greenway will interact with neighborhood spaces. So everywhere that the greenway currently crosses a street in your neighborhood, that will be an access point to connect to local business or arrive there from other neighborhood destinations. Where possible, there'll also be entries directly from neighborhoods, and along the way, properties that are adjacent to the former railway will be receiving screening and fencing as a part of the Greenway development. And in the area that you just saw on that west side, where the Greenway has been under construction and is now open for use, is that the investment is not only clearing away blight and overgrowth from the rail corridor itself. We're seeing changes in the neighborhoods. We're seeing people buying side lots, investing in their homes, and in certain places, homes that have been vacant for years are even being renovated and occupied. Along the way as well, the General Services Department is looking at properties that are immediately adjacent to the Greenway. And so as they're coming through and remediating the dumping and blight of the rail corridor, they're also taking opportunities to bring down buildings, dangerous buildings, through the emergency demo process and clear out blight from these properties adjacent to the Greenway. So you can see in this example of the property on Cloverdale that we took down a dangerous building, cleared away years of dumping, and now have a clean slate for future opportunities. I want to take a minute to honor the team that is working hard on the Greenway in the General Services Department. You have planners, construction managers, as well as designers that are working to make sure that the Greenway vision comes to life piece by piece, segment by segment. And we will be working alongside them and have them at our meetings so that if you have questions about the Greenway design and construction as it's coming through your neighborhood, you can reach out to the General Services Department and get those questions answered directly. I'd also like to introduce our planning staff that's dedicated to this project. We have a planning team that is going to be running the neighborhood planning process. And what that really means, what our job is to convene people. So through the engagement process, as well as internal coordination. That means that we're bringing all the other departments to the table, that we're hearing the needs and concerns of each neighborhood along the Greenway and working together to come up with strategies and ideas to make sure that the Greenway has a positive impact on your community. The other part of our team that I want to note is our consultant team during this planning study. We bring them on because of their expertise across certain areas in the plan. For one, they're led by Interface Studio, who has experience in Detroit and elsewhere. Sidewalk Detroit is our local community engagement partner who will be with us along the way with creative and interactive engagement opportunities throughout the planning process. And it's really important that the reason that we have selected this team and that we are so excited to have them on board is their experience in other cities where projects like the Joe Louis Greenway have occurred, so that we can learn from the impact that that's had on other neighborhoods, to learn from programs, policies, and opportunities that have been leveraged in other projects. What we see when we look to other cities is that projects like the Joe Louis Greenway that are major investments in community have an impact. We've seen that they could impact housing values, building wealth for local residents, drive business to local business, create opportunities for entrepreneurs to open new businesses, and even attract entire new industries to places along the Greenway. What we don't know is how the Joe Louis Greenway will impact our city. So as a part of this process, what we need to do is look to these other places, understand what the potential impacts could be, understand from you what the ideal impacts would be, and work together to plan for those in the city of Detroit. And that's really what this is about. How do we best leverage the investment of the Joe Louis Greenway to create more equitable outcomes that impact our communities? And the first step to this is to talk to you, residents, business owners, and other key stakeholders. This is the opportunity to start the conversation with you about what is your priority, what are your challenges, and what you want to see. Once we understand the opportunity, both at different scales and across different scope areas, we'll start to develop together detailed action plans and policies for the neighborhoods around the Joe Louis Greenway. So with that, I just want to open up to kind of the way that we're organizing this study. The planning area is a half mile in either direction from the Greenway route itself. So being 27.5 miles around the city, a mile along all of those, it's a large area. The way we have broken this up is into 9 neighborhood areas along the Greenway. The 3 along the riverfront, through Del Rey, downtown, the West Riverfront, and Dequindre Cut, those have gone through neighborhood planning processes at other times and have ongoing priorities, outcomes, and initiatives that we'd like to support and understand how we can lift up through our planning process. But where we'll be focusing is the other 5 neighborhood areas where we'll have targeted engagement and conversation with community. So that is the Joe Louis Greenway Dequindre Cut Extension area, Joe Louis Greenway Northeast, Joe Louis Greenway Northwest, Joe Louis Greenway Westside, and Joe Louis Greenway Southwest. So getting in a little bit more to the details of what this planning study is about, we always want to come back to this concept that the Joe Louis Greenway planning study is not about the Greenway itself. The Greenway is important and catalytic, and the planning, design, and construction of that incredible investment is being managed by the General Services Department and based upon the Joe Louis Greenway framework, which was published in May of 2021. But what we're talking about in our Joe Louis Greenway neighborhood planning study is how that Greenway investment can benefit the neighboring communities. And we think about that across 6 different scope areas. The first, and this comes directly from the vision set by the Greenway framework, people wanted to talk about how to use the Greenway to build wealth. What that means is talking about identifying new homeownership opportunities for residents to participate in the value of spaces around the Greenway, supporting existing homeowners in a number of different ways, from home repair to legal support, protecting that investment that's been made so that they can build wealth. and then also improving housing quality across the board. We'll talk a lot about housing affordability and how the Greenway might impact that. And what we need to plan for is how we preserve existing affordable options and also explore possibilities and plan for future affordable housing when it's necessary. Another key priority that came out of the planning framework is creating jobs and sustaining business. This means connecting residents and customers to existing small business, supporting those small businesses to grow, and empowering entrepreneurs to bring new business to the areas along the Greenway. We think about the spaces along the Greenway, and we know that there is a ton of vacant land. There are needs around neighborhood infrastructure, and there's opportunity to leverage public art to really add vibrancy to some of these places, to tell the stories, to beautify the spaces along the Greenway. So it's important for us to understand from you, what are the spaces in your neighborhood that need attention? What are the challenges that you face, and what are the opportunities you see? The next topic of connectivity and mobility is really important to the Greenway. After all, it is a transportation corridor and recreation asset that's connecting over 30 Detroit neighborhoods. So when we're talking about that from a neighborhood planning perspective, it means thinking about where people are going from the Greenway and how they're getting to the Greenway. So whether this is challenges you face on routes that you take or ideas you have for spaces that really should benefit from connecting to the Greenway, we want to hear about transit options and routes and connections that you want to see made by this Greenway investment. Lastly, what's really important as a part of making sure that the vision for this Greenway is realized in the neighborhood planning is that the growth and opportunities are homegrown. This means that we need to make sure that we have organizational capacity within the neighborhoods to connect residents and business owners to existing resources, to help drive new neighborhood development, and to support existing organizations in the area. So the final bucket in our planning study will be to talk about where those gaps are and how we can fill them.
Hello again, Joseph back to talk about what we've learned so far. The Joe Louis Greenway is a substantial investment that will likely cause some changes in your neighborhood. We can physically see an old railroad being transitioned into a beautiful usable green space, but we also know this type of investment can have economic impacts as well. Through the planning study, we will be taking an in-depth look at your neighborhood, examining its existing condition. And we're back to the map of our planning areas. So, this is the part of the presentation where you can skip ahead to your specific planning area from the time bar, or you can use the timestamp that'll be in the caption below. We'll be looking at the JLG Westside, the JLG Northwest, the JLG Northeast, and the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension. We also have the JLG Southwest, but our meeting process has not kicked off in that neighborhood as of yet. This is a current map of the West Side study area. As you can see, it includes multiple neighborhoods within the area, including Littlefield, Bart McFarland, Midwest, Grand River and I-96, and Oakland Boulevard. In order to know where you're going, you have to examine existing conditions. This is a snapshot of the JLG Westside statistical data that we found through our initial analysis. We're not only looking at the raw data from these planning areas, we're also looking at work that's already been done, whether it's city-led or community-led. We're taking the plans that have already been created and folding them into our work as to not recreate the wheel, but to continue to lift up the work that's already been done within these areas. This is the land use analysis for the JLG Westside. It's where we examine how land is currently being used versus how it's zoned. We've also learned that in this area, it's mostly residential and vacant land. There is some industrial land that lies along the industrial corridor in the middle where the Joe Louis Greenway is being built. So within the JLG Westside, vacant land is a mixture of formerly industrial homes that have been torn down and also larger vacant land adjacent to the Greenway. Concentrations of vacant land differ from east to west, as well as the north to the south. This is the residential breakdown for the JLG Westside. Within this planning area, we see that a majority of housing types are single family, with a close to a 50-50 split between owner-occupied and renter-occupied. There's no real concentration of housing types within this area, but within this area, there is a place along the Joe Louis Greenway that has residential on either side, so that is very unique to this portion of the Greenway. The only other place where this happens off-street is at the Dequindre Cut, where it is below grade. This is the commercial corridor analysis for the JLG Westside. Across the West Side, we've learned that almost half of all commercial properties are businesses related to the automobile. Another unique thing about this planning area is that the Joe Louis Greenway crosses multiple commercial corridors within the area. And so as we continue to examine commercial corridors and their breakdown, we know that there's little commercial activity happening on these corridors. Many of the corridors are now populated by businesses serving automobiles and then also churches, which have taken over formerly commercial buildings. This is the breakdown of the industrial land within this planning area. There's a core industrial district centered off Chicago, with smaller industrial districts to the north and south. The primary types of businesses are smaller scale warehouses and light manufacturing. This is the JLG Northwest study area. This study area includes multiple neighborhoods, including Pilgrim Village, the Oakland Boulevard community, and also Hope Village. In order to know where you're going, you have to examine existing conditions. This is a snapshot of the statistical data from the JLG Northwest. Not only are we looking at the data, we're looking at work that has already been done within these planning areas. So we're being intentional about using the work that's already been done, both community-led and city-led, and folding it into our work. So we're not recreating the wheel, but we're actually utilizing the work that's already been done within the community. This is the land use analysis for the JLG Northwest. We examined how land is currently being used versus how it's zoned. And within this area, you can see a mixture of residential and industrial highlighted in purple. As far as vacancy for the JLG Northwest, there is much more vacancy in the north and west, with a larger number of vacant properties over an acre in size, and they're often immediately adjacent to the Joe Louis Greenway. You can see those outlined in gray north of the Greenway on the map. This is a residential breakdown of the JLG Northwest. Within this planning area, we understand that there are a mixture of single-family and multifamily housing. There's also a higher concentration of multifamily housing south of the Greenway. Through the planning study, we'll have opportunities to examine how we can support and preserve naturally occurring affordable housing, and then also support the quality of housing for homeowners and renters. This is a snapshot of the commercial corridors that lie in the JLG Northwest planning area. As you can see, Livernois is the most active commercial corridor, having a higher percent of commercial properties that are retail than other portions of the Joe Louis Greenway. We also understand that commercial buildings in this planning area are more auto-oriented versus where the Avenue of Fashion lies. This is a snapshot of the industrial lands that lie within the JLG Northwest planning area. We understand that with industrial properties comes things like truck traffic and pollution, and some other things that affect neighborhoods. We also know that through this planning study, we'll have an opportunity to examine connectivity from the Greenway to these residential areas adjacent to the industry. We also know that the industrial properties within this planning area has caused some barrier. So through the planning study, we'll be looking for better connections to the Greenway from the residential areas. This is the JLG Northeast planning area. This area consists of multiple neighborhoods, including Cadillac Heights, North Campo, Banglatown, East Davidson Village, Griggsdale Farms, and Greenfield Park. In order to know where you're going, you have to examine existing conditions. This is a snapshot of the statistical data from the JLG Northeast planning area. And as we're continuing to look at the data and statistics for this planning area, we're also looking at the work that has already been done so we can fold it into our work so that we're not recreating the wheel, but we're being intentional about looking at the work that's already been done and continuing that work as well. This is the land use analysis for the JLG Northeast. It's where we take a look at how land is currently being used versus how it's zoned. In the JLG Northeast, the land is primarily made up of residential properties, vacant land, and also to a lesser extent, residential buildings. This is a snapshot of the JLG Northeast's vacancy. We understand that there is a large presence of vacant land within this Northeast planning area. This is a snapshot of the residential breakdown of the planning area for the JLG Northeast. A majority of the housing types are single family within this planning area, with over 60% of residents as homeowners, which is higher than other areas of the Joe Louis Greenway. There also are pockets of denser, more intact residential neighborhoods across the Northeast planning area, highlighted on the map. This is a snapshot of the commercial corridors within this planning area. Almost half of the commercial properties are businesses serving automobiles. Joseph Campbell Avenue is the most important commercial street along the Joe Louis Greenway in this planning area, as it is one of the few places where the Greenway will be on street through an active corridor. This is a snapshot of the industrial properties within the JLG Northeast. While there are industrial properties along the former rail right-of-way, the Northeast has the lowest number of land devoted to industrial uses. This is the JLG Dequindre Cut planning area. This planning area consists of multiple neighborhoods, including that of Russell Industrial, Milwaukee Junction, Pooltown East, McDougall Hunt, and Forest Park. In order to know where we're going, you have to examine existing conditions. This is a snapshot of the statistical data from the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension area. In addition to conversations during the Greenway planning, we know that there have been extensive planning conversations, both city-led and community-led. So what we're doing is being intentional about examining the work that's already been done, both city-led and community-led, and folding that into our current work so we're not recreating the wheel, but continuing the work that's already being done. This is a land use analysis for the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension. Alongside reviewing prior plans, we are taking a look at how land in the area is used versus how it's zoned. we want to understand how the Dequindre Cut Extension may impact the use of land in the future. This map is of the current land use along the Greenway. Purple is industrial, which you see there is a large concentration of within this planning area, and then also there's vacant land in gray. As you know, the industrial uses are concentrated along the freeway corridors to the west and north, and the Greenway will extend north from the existing Dequindre Cut and be flanked by industrial uses on both sides. Through this planning study, we want to explore ways to mitigate conflicts between all of these adjacent uses and improve the experience of the residents accessing the Greenway from the residential areas. This is a snapshot of the residential breakdown of the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension. In this planning area, there are a combination of single-family and multifamily housing along with concentrations of residents living in these larger apartment developments that are highlighted on the map. This is a snapshot of the commercial corridors that lie within the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension. Shane is zoned and historically served as a neighborhood commercial corridor. However, most of the active use on Shane today are churches, while the retail and commercial activity is concentrated along Gratiot, then also in Eastern Market core. This is a snapshot of the industrial properties within the JLG Dequindre Cut Extension. As we know, there is a high concentration of industrial properties within this planning area. Industrial uses account for 49% of parcels within this area, and they are mostly large-scale properties creating barriers of access to residential communities adjacent. Those barriers of access is one of the main things that we'll be examining through this planning study. The planning study offers the opportunity to identify priority connections and recommend road improvements, screening, and beautification to better connect east and west from the Greenway to neighborhoods and cultural center. And so, because of the size and scope of our project, we wanted to have a robust community engagement plan where we would connect with residents, business owners, community development organizations, and other stakeholders within each planning area. And to do this, we'll continue to host in-person community gatherings over the next year and a half, where community members will be delving into discussion around the impacts of the Greenway with us. Much like the original Joe Louis Greenway framework, we wanted to have residents involved from the very beginning. In an effort to increase the reach of our engagement, we sought out individuals that were creating a difference in their community already, had some connections to residents, and we even connected with the original Joe Louis Greenway Citizens Advisory Council, who in turn shared their wealth of knowledge and their experience through their framework process. So the next step in this process is for us to continue to gather input, but also hosting our next round of meetings in the summer where we'll have those more targeted discussions on some of those areas that Michelle talked about, building wealth and housing and how to help stabilize and support small business, or connectivity and organizational capacity. So these are the topics that we will be hosting meetings to go in depth and having those deeper conversations. And so as we continue to gather this data and community input from you, all these ideas will go into our final draft and deliverables, which we will have ready at the end of the planning study process. Thank you for watching our virtual presentation. If you're one of those people that missed our first round of in-person meetings, don't worry, we have more in-person meetings coming soon. But also, we do have a virtual survey that you can take by clicking the link below. Our website is detroitmi.gov/JLG planning. Thank you and have a great day.